Someone hands you a racehorse tomorrow, not a share in one. The whole animal. A living, breathing thoroughbred, standing in a stall, ears twitching, worth, on paper, a small fortune. And of everything we've put on this channel's ledger, this is the strangest asset of all, because it does almost nothing. An island at least sits there being an island. A theme park runs, sells tickets, generates something. A racehorse spends the overwhelming majority of its life standing in a stable, eating, being groomed, being walked in slow circles. It produces nothing. It sells nothing. On the vast majority of days, it simply exists, quietly, expensively, and completely at the mercy of things you cannot control. And that is exactly what makes it dangerous, because the bills do not care that it's standing still. So here's the question this episode exists to answer. How does an animal that spends its life doing nothing in a stall cost $60,000 a year? And how did the single most expensive horse ever sold, bought for $70 million, end up standing at a fee that made him the cheapest stallion on his own farm? Let's open the ledger. Start with buying the thing, because even here the numbers lie to you. You can buy a racehorse for $4,000. You can buy one for $4 million. At the elite yearling auctions, the average sits somewhere around $50,000, but that average hides everything. At a single sale, one horse might change hands for $1,000, while another, 2 stalls down, sells for over $1 million. And here is the first brutal truth of this business. Nobody, not the breeder, not the trainer, not the millionaire in the bidding war, can look at a young horse and know if it can run. The pedigree is a probability, not a promise. You are buying a lottery ticket that happens to be alive, and the price of the ticket tells you almost nothing about whether it wins. So let's buy a sensible one. A well-bred yearling, with genuine potential. Put it on the ledger. $50,000. And now, the horse does what horses do. It costs you money every single day, whether it ever sees a racetrack or not. Here's where people imagine the easy part begins. You bought an athlete. Now it trains. It races. It wins. The purses roll in. Except a racehorse can't just be owned. It has to be kept, and kept to a standard most people cannot imagine. Let's open the second half of the ledger. The single largest line is the trainer's day rate. Your horse lives at the trainer's stable, and you pay for every day it's there. Not per race, not per win, per day. At a major track, that day rate runs between $85 and $120 every day of the year. Do the arithmetic. At $100 a day, that's over $36,000 a year for one horse, before anything else happens. And that day rate isn't profit for the trainer. It barely covers the people it takes to keep one racehorse alive and fit. The grooms, the exercise riders, the hot walkers, the assistants. A racehorse needs a small team around it, every day, forever. Put it on the ledger. Call it $36,000 a year, just for the day rate. Then the vet. And this is where a racehorse stops resembling any normal animal. It is a finely tuned athlete, running at 40 miles an hour, on legs about the width of a human wrist. Routine care runs a few thousand a year, but routine is the word that hides the danger. Colic surgery alone runs $5,000 to $15,000, and a single bad step on the track can end the horse's career in a second, with no warning and no refund. Then the farrier, roughly every month, because the feet are everything. Then feed, dentistry, transport to the races, and the fees just to enter them. And then the cost, almost nobody thinks about until it's too late. Insurance. You are keeping a fragile, expensive animal that can injure itself fatally in a single stride. Mortality cover runs a percentage of the horse's value every year, and the more the horse is worth, the more it costs to protect. Add it up honestly, and keeping one racehorse in training runs somewhere between $45,000 and over $65,000 a year. At the top tracks, it climbs past $100,000. Put it on the ledger, $60,000 a year, for an animal that, on almost every one of those days, is standing in a stall doing nothing at all. Now, finally, the money, the purses, the winning. This is the part everyone buys the dream for. So let's look at the income side of the ledger honestly, because this is where the whole fantasy meets the wall. According to the Thoroughbred Owners and Breeders Association, fewer than 8 to 10% of racehorses earn enough in prize money to cover their annual costs. Read that again. More than 9 out of 10 racehorses lose money, not counting the purchase price, just the running costs. The other 90% are horses whose owners pay $60,000 a year to watch them earn less than $60,000 a year, often far less, sometimes nothing at all. And it's worse than a coin flip, because the money in racing is savagely concentrated. A tiny handful of elite horses win the enormous purses. Everyone else runs for modest prizes at smaller tracks, races where finishing well might earn a few $1,000s, against $60,000 a year in costs. The average horse, across an entire year of racing, earns only a few $1,000s in total. This is the trap at the center of owning a racehorse. Your costs are large, fixed, and relentless. They arrive every single day the horse is alive. Your revenue depends entirely on whether this specific animal turns out to be one of the rare few that can actually run, a fact you cannot know when you buy it, cannot control once you own it, and can lose in a single stride on the track. You are not buying an income. You are paying, in advance and at great expense, for the chance at one. Which brings us to the most expensive horse the world has ever seen. His name was Fusaichi Pegasus. In 2000, he won the Kentucky Derby, and he moved like the future of the entire sport. He had been bought as a young horse for $4 million, already an enormous price. But after the Derby, a bidding war broke out, and the Irish breeding giant Coolmore bought him for a reported $70 million. $70 million for a single horse, a world record that still stands. But notice what they were really buying. Fusaichi Pegasus, in his entire racing career, earned just under $2 million. Coolmore didn't pay $70 million for that. They paid it for what he might do after racing, in the breeding shed. The plan was simple. A champion this brilliant would father champions, and those foals would be worth fortunes. So he retired to stud, and in his first year he stood for $150,000 per foal. The money came in fast. On the early fees alone, across his first crops, he earned back most of that $70 million. And then, his children began to race. They were, mostly, ordinary. A few were good, very few were great. The one thing the $70 million was actually betting on, that his brilliance would pass down, largely didn't happen. And in this business, a stallion is worth exactly what breeders will pay to use him, and breeders pay for results. So the fee began to fall, from $150,000 down to 75, then 45, then 30, then 15, and finally to $7,500 per foal, where it stayed for years. The most expensive horse in the history of the world ended up standing at $7,500, the cheapest stallion on his own farm. Now, whether Coolmore lost on the deal is genuinely debated. Those enormous early fees brought in a great deal before the collapse. But that's almost the darkest part of the lesson. The people who truly lost were further down the chain. The breeders who paid $150,000 for a single mating, raised a foal for 2 years at enormous cost, and watched it fail to become a champion. They paid the top price for the dream, and the dream didn't run. And Fusaichi Pegasus was a good horse who simply didn't pass it on. Now think about the 90% that were never champions at all. Now the other side, because when a racehorse works, few things on earth pay like it. A single elite stallion can earn more in the breeding shed than almost any other animal alive, covering over 100 mares a year at 6 figures each. A great race mare can produce champion after champion. A Derby winner turns a $50,000 yearling into a creature worth tens of millions overnight. The upside is not just real, it is astronomical. But now hold that against the odds we already counted. More than 9 in 10 don't cover their own feed bill. The astronomical upside exists precisely because the base rate of failure is so brutal. You are being offered a spectacular prize in a game almost everyone loses. And if it goes wrong, there's no graceful exit. Unlike an island or a park, this asset is alive.
It comes to life.
It can't be paused. It can't be mothballed. It eats every day, whether it's winning or standing in a stall with a career-ending injury. And a horse that can't run and can't breed profitably has almost no market value at all, while still costing you thousands a month to simply keep breathing. The responsibility doesn't end when the earning does. So let's close the ledger. $50,000 to buy the ticket, $60,000 a year to hold it, every year, whether the horse runs or not. A greater than 90% chance it never covers even that. And an upside so enormous, it convinces people, again and again, to take a bet the numbers say they'll almost certainly lose. Now go back to the beginning. Someone hands you a racehorse, a living fortune, standing quietly in a stall. And that's the illusion, right there in that image. It looks like an asset at rest, something valuable, just waiting. But it isn't resting, it's running, through your money. Every single day it stands there doing nothing. The stillness is the most expensive part. The house, this time, isn't a casino or a track. It's the arithmetic of biology and chance. And it was never on your side. Next time, we open the ledger on something millions of people are convinced is the safest money they'll ever spend, right up until the moment it quietly takes all of it.